whoever controls the ports controls the region. A century ago, colonial powers understood this. Today, China, the EU, and Middle Eastern investors grasp it just as firmly. Each group is strategically funding rival projects across East Africa. In the shadow of Africa's eastern coastline, a trade war is unfolding as Kenya and Tanzania are locked in a fierce economic battle to capture over $250 billion in trade from landlocked nations. Uganda, Rwanda, the DRC, and South Sudan are all desperate for access to the sea. Kenya's historic dominance through its port of Mombasa now faces a direct challenge from Tanzania's ambitious plan to transform Bagamoyo into East Africa's largest port, with more than 10 times Mombasa's capacity. Helped by outside capital, both nations are racing to construct massive infrastructure connected to their port facilities, from enormous harbors to railways stretching hundreds of miles and highways cutting through the wilderness. This economic rivalry has sparked a series of escalating trade disputes and tariff battles, fueling national pride for some while causing significant frustration for others on both sides of the border. This episode will bring clarity on the ongoing port war in East Africa and explore the surprising turn of events that might change everything. At the dawn of the 20th century, European colonial ambitions drew two distinct transport blueprints along East Africa's coastline. In Kenya, the Mombasa port emerged as the spine of the British economic exploitation machine, aimed at extracting and exporting natural resources. Mombasa's identity as a trade hub became rooted in this infrastructural artery, which would eventually morph into the Northern Corridor, linking Kenya to Uganda, Rwanda, Burundi, and parts of the DRC. To the south, German East Africa followed its own trajectory. Dar es Salaam was developed with similar intent: extract and export. The Germans constructed a major railway line that extended inland from a central hub, providing transportation access to territories under German control. Post-World War II, the British got control of Tanganyika and preserved Dar es Salaam's commercial role. Over decades, the Central Corridor took shape, stretching toward Rwanda, Burundi, Zambia, and the DRC. Though constructed for separate empires, these transport routes became the foundation of a future intense rivalry. When Kenya gained its independence in 1963, the country inherited a highly functioning port with a tested trade route. The Northern Corridor, anchored by Mombasa, was already moving goods inland, so Kenya doubled down, expanding port infrastructure, building new berths, and connecting Nairobi to Kisumu through rail to inland container depots. This momentum translated into unchallenged market control. Mombasa became the logistical heartbeat for East Africa, and the Kenya Ports Authority emerged as a crucial trade facilitator, making the country's dominance in the region not only geographical but institutional as well. Its financial systems, road networks, and political stability supported its role as East Africa's trade gateway. However, Kenya's early advantage began to erode in the face of mounting challenges. As trade volumes surged, Mombasa's once efficient operations buckled under pressure, leading to severe congestion. Often due to bureaucratic red tape, delays in customs clearance slowed processes and significantly increased ship turnaround times. It took days or sometimes weeks just to offload cargo. The port is also infamous for its various charges and high fees. Traders and transporters have repeatedly protested against these new and increased inspection fees, parking charges, and other levies, which have been known to eat more than 50% of a trader's costs. So, naturally landlocked neighbors started to look for alternatives. Rwanda built an inland port in Kigali to reduce dependency, and Uganda entered talks with Tanzania. But with the majority share of the regional trade flowing through its borders, Kenya saw its dominance as unassailable, confident that no one country could pose a serious threat to its position. As Mombasa grew congested, Tanzania started to understand its coastline's value and saw the opportunity to transform its ports into geopolitical tools. Slowly but surely, the government focused its strategy to modernize and expand its port capabilities. Dar es Salaam underwent upgrades in dredging, berths, as well as efficiency standards. The port started to build leverage and positioned itself as a viable alternative to its bloated and slow Kenyan counterpart. As infrastructure became a tool of influence, The rivalry between the two countries escalated into a full-blown infrastructure battlefield. In 2013, Tanzania stunned the region with the announcement of the $10 billion Bagamoyo Port project. Initially backed by Chinese and Omani partners, the vision was to create the largest port in East Africa, with a future capacity of up to 20 million containers per year. That's 25 times the current output of Dar es Salaam. Bagamoyo was designed to offer landlocked neighbors a faster, less congested alternative to Kenya. China's involvement through its Belt and Road Initiative signaled an ambition that went beyond commerce, hinting at a reshaping of regional power. But the project quickly ran into turbulence. Former President Magufuli halted construction, calling the initial Chinese terms exploitative. The Chinese wanted a 33-year guarantee and a 99-year lease, along with tax holidays and restrictions on Tanzania's ability to develop other ports. Despite these setbacks, President Samia Suluhu Hassan later revived negotiations, seeking more favorable terms and keeping the dream of Bagamoyo alive. The Tanzanian government has allocated more than $8 million for early construction phases. The work schedule is set to begin in stages during the year. Kenya did not sit idle and watch its dominance evaporate. The country's answer was the Lamu Port South Sudan-Ethiopia Transport Corridor, or LAPSET. With its impressive scale of 32 berths, highways, oil pipelines, and a new standard gauge railway stretching deep into the continent, LAPSET aims to bypass the congestion of Mombasa and open up new trade routes, diversifying Kenya's economic reach and reducing dependence on traditional corridors. But the project faced its own set of obstacles: regional insecurity, political games, and slow investment. Despite these hurdles, Kenya pressed on, determined not to lose its logistical crown. Today, 4 berths at Lamu Port are operational, and it recently handled its first major cargo for Ethiopia, marking a significant milestone in regional trade diversification. The port building and security facilities are 95% complete, while the Isiolo airport is operational, and the highway from the port to the airport is nearly complete. Kenya and Ethiopia have formalized agreements to use Lamu Port, aiming to reduce Ethiopia's near-total dependence on Djibouti. As the infrastructure race intensified, the battleground shifted to Uganda. President Museveni, aware of his country's leverage, skillfully played Kenya and Tanzania against each other. Uganda had long relied on Kenya's Mombasa port, but grew frustrated with high costs and delays. So Tanzania seized the opportunity, offering more attractive terms and positioning Dar es Salaam and potentially Bagamoyo as viable alternatives. The diplomatic maneuvering became a high-stakes chess game. Kenya's President Ruto lobbied hard, offering Uganda incentives like land for a dry port and waiving container deposit fees. Meanwhile, Tanzania's President Suluhu Hassan strengthened ties with Uganda, pushing for joint infrastructure projects and reducing trade barriers. Uganda, for its part, keeps its options open. The country made the bold decision to build a crude oil pipeline through Tanzania instead of Kenya, an economic and symbolic blow to Nairobi's ambitions. The rivalry didn't stop at the water's edge. Both nations doubled down on rail infrastructure, each building parallel systems to capture the same lucrative cargo flows. Kenya's railway, SGR, is aimed at hauling half of Mombasa's cargo inland to Uganda and beyond. Tanzania responded by upgrading its central corridor, linking Dar es Salaam to Rwanda, Burundi, and the DRC, as well as building its own SGR to Mwanza on Lake Victoria, potentially siphoning again Ugandan cargo away from Kenya. The infrastructure race is no longer just about ports, but the entirety of East Africa's trade. And this, you see, attracted outside powers. China, already deeply embedded in both countries' infrastructure projects, became the most visible player, funding and building ports, railways, and highways. In Tanzania, China Merchant Holdings and Oman's State General Reserve Fund bankrolled Bagamoyo, while in Kenya, Chinese firms built the SGR and eyed Lamu's development. Meanwhile, the European Union invested in modernizing Dar es Salaam and supporting the Northern Corridor, while Middle Eastern investors from the UAE and Oman poured money into rival ports. More than financiers, these are kingmakers, shaping the region's future and deepening rivalries. One could argue that their investments offers East African nations new options, but also raised concerns about debt, sovereignty, and shifting geopolitical alliances. In a world blinded by national interests, the continent sometimes remembers that these borders are not his and has embarked on a 100-year march to form a strong and cohesive union. For years, East African ports are locked in fierce competition. Each port aimed to capture as much regional cargo as possible, but as the continent gets wiser to the reality of its abuse, a new idea has taken root. Not every port needs to serve the same markets or handle the same cargo. Instead, each could specialize and play to its strengths and geographical advantages. Mombasa, with its strong connections to Uganda and South Sudan, naturally became a gateway for these northern hinterlands, while Dar es Salaam emerged as the preferred entry point for Rwanda and Burundi, especially as inefficiencies in the northern corridor pushed these countries to seek alternatives. Then, specialized ports began to appear. In Mozambique for coal, and Djibouti for its LNG terminals, both designed for bulk cargo rather than general freight. Djibouti in particular is positioned to become a transshipment hub, leveraging the country's strategic location on major shipping lanes. There is a full episode on the channel about Djibouti's battle with Dubai if you are interested. Finally, inland dry ports allow seaports to focus on maritime logistics, while inland facilities manage distribution and collection. This means that not every port can become a regional hub. African countries have long recognized that working together could bring mutual benefits, even as competition lingers in the background. The East African community has stepped in to transform rivalry into coordinated development. In 2005, the customs union abolished tariffs within the community, while the common market in 2010 promoted the free movement of goods. The single customs territory in 2013 aimed to streamline customs clearance and reduce port congestion. Despite these advances, in our continent's true fashion, national interests and economic disparities often pulls countries in different directions. But yet, joint initiatives and shared investment in cross-border infrastructure are becoming more common, supported by both regional plans and international partners. With East Africa as the leader, the whole continent is steadily moving toward its most ambitious goal yet: African Union's Continental Free Trade Agreement. A single, integrated market relying on efficient interconnected infrastructure and harmonized trade rules. Become a Wasaso Associates on Patreon. It's free. You'll get various perks and privileges like voting on episode, accessing sources for each video, and getting credit as a producer. I want you to be part of the channel's story.